Hey folks, this is Jim here with Science Talk, and I just wanted to make a quick video discussing the situation with the snow crabs up here in Alaska. I'm sure you've all probably heard that basically 1 billion, with a B, crabs have disappeared. And the result is that the snow crab fisheries have been shut down. And usually they start up in late October, November, and running through some of the winter months here. Snow crab season of 2022, 2023 shut down totally. So why is this happening? Well, I just saw a report from ADFG, Alaska Department of Fish and Game, that they're blaming climate change. I could have told you that. In fact, for those of you who've been regularly watching my videos, you know that I have been saying about how the phytoplankton community, there's been a shift there in the Gulf of Alaska. Namely, that there's been a shift from diatoms, which are a group that prefer colder waters, to coccolithophorids, which are a group that prefer warmer waters. And with that, you change the ecosystem. You change how, the zooplankton community that grades upon that, and then the organisms that grades upon the zooplankton, etc., etc. But here's the other thing. With the warmer waters, and this was alluded to in the report by ADFG, that in warmer waters, you also increase the metabolic rates. So, in essence, the crabs, quote unquote, burn themselves out, metabolically speaking. And if that's the case, they won't be able to put energy into producing gametes. Because if, with the warmer waters, if the metabolism speeds up, then whatever they ingest, whatever the caloric content is used to run the metabolism without any extra set aside for producing gametes. So that is another problem. Another huge problem, and I haven't seen any indications of this, but it is something to definitely keep in mind, is that warmer waters, the ability of disease organisms to take hold within the populations is increased. And if you have a disease organism taking hold and spreads throughout the population, that will also decimate numbers. So, this is an example of climate change impacting humans. In this case, by impacting a food source. Now, it's bad enough that we're already overfishing most of the oceans. You start throwing in climate change, where you start changing the whole ecosystem, the structure of the trophic levels, and so forth, along with changing the physics of the oceans, stratification, reduced mixing of nutrients into the photic zone, etc. All the things we've been discussing for years on my channel. And you can see why we have a situation where the snow crab industry is shut down. Will it recover? Who knows? Stay tuned. If looking at, when you look at the structure of the year classes and recruitment, year class strength, it's not going to recover in one season. I doubt it very much. It'd probably take a few years. So it would not surprise me if the snow crab fisheries is shut down for several years. And of course, then you have the impact on the fishermen, from an economic point of view. They have vessels and gear that they basically have mortgaged. So now they got to pay those off, and how we're going to pay those off is going to be very, very difficult because they're basically out of work. We saw a similar situation in the North Atlantic off Newfoundland back in the 90s when they shut down the cod fisheries and the pollock. Basically, as one fisherman said at a meeting, let's face it, boys, we caught them all. That was a case of overfishing. Since then, the stocks have returned and recovered, not to the levels as before, but to the point where limited uh, fishing and harvesting does take place. But this is an example of what is happening around the planet. I recently was part of a team that submitted a paper for publication. It's in the peer review process now. I was asked to write a literature review of what are the major factors that cause uh, either drastic reduction in numbers of species or causing what we call MEEs, mass extinction events. So, pouring through the literature and so forth, I identified um, four major things. One is warming of the oceans. Two, acidification of the oceans. Three, increased stratification that reduces mixing and prevents sequestering of nutrients, heat, carbon to depth. And four, a reduction in net primary productivity, NPP. When looking at past extinction events, mass extinction events that took place before, at least one of those four factors was involved. Sometimes two, but at least one. All four are taking place right now in the oceans. All four. Not good. I also identified two other factors that are basically of human doing. And let's face it, we're burning the fossil fuels, and that is what's causing those four factors. The acidification, the warming, increased stratification, reduction in NPP. But I also identified plastics, plastic pollution, and overfishing. We are overfishing the oceans to the point, along with these environmental conditions, where the oceans are dying. If the oceans die, we die. Because phytoplanktons, you heard me say this before, provide some 55 to 80% of atmospheric oxygen. Phytoplanktons drop off, oxygen levels will decrease. And by the way, they are. We are already measuring a reduction or a decrease in atmospheric oxygen. In my view, it's only going to get worse from here. You can talk about all these mitigations and so forth, but you've heard me argue before. We went past the tipping point for the planet in general back in the mid 90s. We have all that ocean heat just waiting to diffuse to the atmosphere. So I wanted to just, give you my quick comments on the situation with the snow crab and put it in a more broader context as to what it means. But it is not good. And this is just one example of many examples of how we're just really majorly screwing up everything and imperiling our own survival as a species. Thank you for your time.